Hey everyone, and welcome to 121 in Flux. I'm Peter, that is Connor. We talk about movies on this show, typically older movies, although this one's not that old because we're in a bit of a pattern right now of having lots of new sequels coming out, so we're doing the back catalogue, we're building up to them. And obviously, it was only a couple episodes ago we did the original Planet of the Apes. This episode is going to be about Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which of course is the start of the current trilogy. Obviously, we're going to do Dawn, and then obviously on Gigawatts when it comes out we'll do War. So yeah, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. From henceforth I will refer to it as Rise of the Apes, which is what it should have been called.
Yeah, pretty much.
We'll start spoiler free and we'll give you warning before we go into spoilers. I think it's worth doing a spoiler free section for this one in Dawn, mainly because I'm thinking maybe some people haven't checked them out yet, the new one's coming out, they're maybe tempted to catch up. We can give them a little
Okay.
spoiler free section to sort of prompt them in the right direction. Which is to say, yes, catch up, watch Rise because it's great.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's great. It's been a few years since I watched it. I haven't watched it since before Dawn came out.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's when I watched it as well last.
yeah. And I want to like set the picture. I want to set the scene for me going to see this in 2011. Which, by the way, it's weird that this is already 6 years old. But so setting the scene for me going to see this in 2011. I remember hearing that there was a new Apes movie coming out, and I was quite fond of the original, and the sequels are okay, not great. Hated the Tim Burton remake with a passion.
It's the only one I refuse to watch.
Directed by Tim Burton and starring Mark Wahlberg, there is nothing about that movie that appeals to me in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, yeah. It says something when I watched each of the original sequels, and then I got to the Tim Burton one. I was like, you know what? I'm good.
I've never actually seen the fifth one, actually.
Which one's the fifth one? I can't remember the order.
I think that's Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen it.
Which, what War's the advanced version of it.
Yeah,
Which, to be fair, this one is kind of the advanced version of Conquest.
it is. Yeah,
In a lot of ways. Much better than Conquest.
yeah.
But it is kind of the advanced version of that. So, yeah, set the scene. I hear there's a new Apes movie, and I go, why is there a new Apes movie? Who the hell asked for a new Planet of the Apes movie? I didn't understand. Nothing had ever lived up to the original. It felt like a dated concept. I'm like, why is there another Apes movie? I saw the trailer and went, oh, I like John Lithgow. I still had memories of James Franco and Spider-Man, which is kind of funny. This is interlinking with us doing those. And I'm like, oh, and I'm like, the CG is pretty good, but I wasn't like convinced. I was still kind of the opinion, who is asking for this? Why are they? It felt like they were forcing a reboot of a franchise that really should never even have been a franchise. It was a great standalone movie.
Yeah, it really feels like throughout its history, the studio has been determined to keep this around
Yeah.
for whatever reason. They keep trying, they
Yeah.
keep going with
Four
it.
sequels, then they had a TV show. I don't know if that was maybe in the middle of the sequels. I can't remember exactly where in the timeline that fits, but there was a TV show, then they tried to resurrect it with Tim Burton in 2001, and 10 years later, here we had Rise, and I was like, this feels just so forced. It feels like a cash grab. It feels like they're trying to use name recognition, and it's probably going to be soulless, kind of like the new version of The Mummy. But well, I've not actually recorded the review for The Mummy yet, so that was a little prelude. At least for the people watching this on
Yeah, yeah,
Patreon.
yeah. For anyone on Patreon, I was going to say,
Yeah.
if you're watching this just on YouTube,
The Mummy
then
review's
the
already
Mummy one's
up.
there. You can
Go
go
watch
watch
it.
that.
Go watch me just trash that movie. Matt might defend it. I don't know. He's not seen it yet. We'll find out how he feels about it. But I'm hoping that he sees sense and that he sees that for the mediocre endeavour that it is. I'm not going
I
to say
haven't,
turd. It's not completely flat out terrible, but it's just really, really mediocre.
I haven't seen it, but there's a reasonable chance Matt will defend it regardless.
I think he might. It might be a bit of a smackdown. Matt's going down. That's all I'm saying. But that's kind of how I felt getting into this. I was kind of feeling with when I first seen Rise that it felt kind of like that, where this is just a pointless thing they want to try and build it. It felt like a soulless Hollywood tentpole attempt, and I wasn't convinced going in. I came out of the movie and said, I'm an idiot. They convinced me why that needed to exist on its own terms. Like, just watching the movie, I understand the story they wanted to tell, at least the filmmakers, what the purpose of it was. And it's basically the example I bring up every time, like they're going to reboot a franchise, from a new sort of concept from the ground up. I go, you know what? Sometimes it can work out. If you've got the right talent doing a story they want to tell, it can be this, and that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very good chance this originated with one of the studio heads going, "We need to keep this
Sure.
around."
Yeah.
But do you know what? Finally, the studio paid off. Yeah, they were right to go. We need to keep this around.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone would have felt like they missed anything if it had, because we'd never have known what this would have been without.
Right.
But it's just an example if you give it to the right people and they do something with it. And this is easily the best one since the original.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah.
Part of what makes Dawn so impressive is that this was great. It surprised everyone, and then Dawn went and surpassed
Blew
it.
it out the water.
In fact, Dawn not only surpassed this, it also surpassed the original. So
I would agree with that. Yeah.
more on that when we talk about Dawn in the very near future. But like, I just remember coming out and being just impressed and like surprised at how invested I got, how much I cared about the characters. Because as much as I don't necessarily think this, comparing it directly to the original, is this the better movie? I don't think it's actually a clear answer. I think some people would say, the original's better for these reasons. I think the original has more commentary on it, in terms of society and stuff like that. But I also don't think that in the original movie I sympathise with any character the same way that I do with Caesar in this.
Probably not. No, it's because everyone in that movie is kind of a dick.
I think this movie is a better character story.
Yeah,
and it's more emotional as a result. Whereas the original Planet of the Apes is perhaps a better sort of science fiction political piece, if you will.
This is definitely more of a blockbuster as well in that sense.
It is more of a blockbuster, but it definitely has stuff to say. It has a heart to it. It's got weight to its emotions, and you feel it. And it has some bloody good references to the first film. We'll talk about them in the spoilers, obviously. We don't want to give that away, because I will say that the main one that everyone thinks of, I never saw coming, and I was surprised in the cinema how much it hit me. Like how much I was, oh man.
Yeah, they play it as such a strong moment.
Yeah, and I'll explain in spoilers why it works so as well as it does. Why it's not just a cheap reference, but
there's a lot of other smaller little ones that kind of are ultimately meaningless and are just nice little nods.
Yeah, there's one that I never noticed the first time, and when I noticed it this time, and it's probably because I just watched the original recently, or maybe I just wasn't paying attention or whatever.
Right.
But this time I noticed it and went, I'm not as keen on that one. That one was a bit forced.
I wonder which one.
Well, we'll find out later, won't we?
Yeah.
So what is Rise of the Planet of the Apes about? It's James Franco plays this scientist who's trying to like develop a cure for Alzheimer's and whatever else it'll do, and he's working with chimps. They're testing on chimps, and he's presenting his find, and basically it all gets shut down. They're told to like kill all the chimps, but one of them who was infected with this drug that makes the chimp smarter had a baby, had a little chimp. And they don't want to kill it, and they feel bad about it, so he takes it home, and whatever the mother had inside her sort of naturally passed on to him, and we see him sort of raise this ape, who is smart, named Caesar, who's the main who I would argue is the main character of the film. It's definitely shared with Franco at the very least, if not more so. And we see him grow up and be smarter and all that kind of thing, and ultimately be mistreated by certain people, and ultimately kind of learn to think for himself in ways beyond just simple intelligence.
It's essentially a coming of age story.
Yeah, it's a coming of age story. This is going to be a weird comparison, but it also reminds me of a superhero movie in some ways.
I think I see what you mean.
He's got an origin. He sort of learns to become the leader of the apes, and ultimately it leads to this big third act where he inspires, and it leads to these big action sequences, which are good. It's not, because we love Wonder Woman that just came out recently, but one criticism we had was the final battle was kind of shit. Whereas I think Apes does it the right way, where it's a really grounded battle and everything has weight to it, and you feel for everything that's happening. And when apes start doing smart things to be tactical, you get kind of excited, and you're like, deal with this, humans, because you're rooting for them. You're not rooting for the humans.
Oh, absolutely.
You're like, suck it, humans. You had your chance. It's ape time now.
Definitely. Like, there's anyone who isn't rooting for the apes is just wrong.
Ironically, anyone who's not rooting for the apes is inhumane.
Yes, yeah, pretty much.
I think that's. Do you know what? My only real complaint, because as much as I think Dawn surpasses it, I think it just does what it does well, but does everything better and has a lot more. It kind of mixes the emotional stuff plus the social commentary that the first one had. It does everything like that, but I think this one, it doesn't really do anything bad. It's just Dawn tops it. So I have very little to complain about. The only thing that sticks out in my mind where I saw, other than that one little reference that I'll mention in spoilers, that stuck out and went, I have to mention this in a negative way, is Tom Felton's American accent.
Oh, it's atrocious, isn't it?
Is rather rough.
And he really can't stay in it either. He's slipping in and out constantly.
Yeah, there was a couple of... Because I'll be honest, for the first couple of lines he had, I wasn't sure if he was doing an American accent. It took a few lines before I was like, oh, he's trying to do an American accent.
Yeah,
shit.
It was. And then there was a line that... It was the same line he says at one point in Harry Potter. And he says it just the exact same way. Like, the accent's just gone. He's just given up on it entirely.
Yeah, so that's a shame. Yeah, he works at the
Sanctuary?
Sanctuary. Yeah, I'm just trying to think if there's a specific sort of name for an ape. Sort of.
I'm going to go with Sanctuary.
Yeah, Sanctuary. Sanctuary works. He works there, and the person who runs it's actually Brian Cox plays that character, isn't it? He's a friendly face to see pop up from time to time.
Yeah, you don't see him all that often.
No, he does pop up a lot. It's just it's been spread out over the last 3 decades.
Well, yeah.
But you go all the way back to Manhunter, and he pops up every so often. So he was in the American Ring, for example. He was in some of the Bourne films, and he pops up a lot.
He does. He's here and there, but he's not consistently everywhere like some others.
And he's in Braveheart, obviously, because he's Scottish, and everyone who was a Scottish actor in 1995 was in Braveheart.
Obviously.
Because, who's done a much better job at an accent than Philip is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, to be fair, his American voice is kind of weirdly unique. It doesn't really sound like any American I've ever heard, but it definitely hides he's Scottish, and you never feel like he's slipping into a different accent. He's always consistent.
Yeah, it's consistent, which is... I think that's the biggest thing. You can have a bad accent, but if you're consistent in it, you buy that that's just what it is.
Yeah. I wouldn't even necessarily as bad as so much, because it never distracts me. It's just, it sounds like a unique kind of... It's almost like he is from another country, but he's from somewhere different that I can't quite place. Kind of thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But it works. So no, nice to see him. Our main character's not Cornelia, sorry, I did that earlier. Caroline, who is the vet at the zoo who helps out, sort of take care of Caesar early on, and sort of becomes close, almost like the mother of the family, as it were, with Franco as the dad. And of course, John Lithgow plays Franco's father, who is suffering from Alzheimer's, and ends up sort of taking the drug as well. But he's a delight to see. I love John Lithgow, and
he's always great, isn't he?
When this came out, I feel like I hadn't seen him in years. Whereas now I feel like I've seen him in a few things since then, but I felt like he disappeared for a while.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There was a time after Third Rock from the Sun ended, which was the late 90s to this. Yeah. I feel like there's a big gaping hole.
There's about a decade gap where you just don't see him.
I wonder if he just I know he was a bit older. Maybe he just had a kid or something. He wanted to hang out with his kids while they were still young for a while, and then he went back to acting.
Maybe he just went, screw it, I'm going to take a break.
Or maybe he was in some obscure TV show for 10 years that I've never heard of, and that's just why we've not seen him.
It's probably more likely, isn't it?
I'm going to look it up afterwards. I want to find out what was he doing for all those years. Oh dear. Also, John Lithgow's a guy who sort of, because he went grey and bald at a really young age, he looks like he's not aged in a long time.
Yeah, you're right. He's one of those.
He's one of those people who's looked about 50 since he was 30, and because of that, he's looked the same age for about 30 years.
Yeah, he's one. It's a blessing and a curse. It's a curse at first when you're younger, but once you hit that age and keep going, then it's like, oh, you look pretty good for your age.
It's kind of like that. You'll be going grey soon.
I will. Yeah.
The gingers always go early. I know. So, do you know what? I'm not worried about going grey. It's one of those weird things that some men really obsess about it, and I think a bit of grey hair is kind of dignified, honestly. And in your case, it's a massive improvement.
I've been finding the odd grey hairs here and there for a few years already at this point, so I've kind of just accepted it's coming soon.
Your 30th birthday is going to be amusing. Have a nice before and after pic. So yeah, that's sort of the main players in the movie. Obviously, there's the science company, the research lab, which I'll admit, it's not really a problem in and of itself, but the name Genesis with a dash was reminding me of Terminator Genesis because of the Y and the
I knew you were going to go with that.
And it annoyed me when I first seen it, but that's not really a fault of this movie. It's just another movie tarnished that word for me with the Y spelling, and it just upset me. But no, that's the main players in the movie. It's got a lot of heart. It's you really feel for Caesar. You kind of root for him, and the performance from Andy Serkis, where obviously is mostly without any speaking or of any kind. It's all there's some sign language, of course, and that's subtitled a little bit. Although there's a lot more than that in the next one. But he just with his eyes, and there's some great moments where you see what he's thinking, and it's just through his performance.
It's mostly in the body language and the facial expressions,
and of course the CG's.
Yeah, you gotta throw it up to Weta Digital for producing that.
Yeah,
to portray a chimp to that extent where you can see every little bit of emotion on the face.
And then as the movie goes on, lots of chimps and other types of ape.
Yeah, and I mean, I would argue again, Dawn probably looks better, but this is still incredible.
It's still fantastic. Dawn for me is still the gold standard. Now, admittedly, with War coming out, that might change.
It might. Can you top what was already done?
But no, the apes in this look incredible.
They do.
Given how often Caesar's on screen and the fact that he's completely CG, it's amazing that there's very few moments where it doesn't look photoreal, and it usually does.
Yeah, there's only a handful of times in the entire film where I looked at it and it just wasn't perfect.
Yeah, and it was still great. It just wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't just quite not there.
Yeah, so. No, I think we're at a point if CG's hitting these levels, it'll start to get to a point where it won't age too badly anymore. Whereas obviously a lot of movies, we did, and we mentioned the Spider-Man films. We watched the first one, and some of that Green Goblin stuff is atrocious to look at now.
Yeah, but I think even at the time you could tell that was gonna age because it didn't look real. Yeah. Whereas this, and there's only so much it can age when it gets to an almost realistic level.
Yeah, no, that is fair. So, how about we go into spoilers then?
Yeah, let's do it.
So, full spoilers from this point on for Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and
can we start with what little Easter egg annoyed you? I really want to know.
Oh, it was Felton saying it's a madhouse when the apes were all shaking the cages after he used the little electric stun gun.
Okay.
That one just felt a bit forced, and I never know. I think it's because there was so much noise from the apes that when the first time or two I seen the film that I never heard them say it.
It's possible, yeah.
And I heard it this time. I went, oh, that one was a bit forced. Whereas the one that I never noticed the first time, and I think it's just because I hadn't seen the original film in a long time, was the Caesar's mum being called Bright Eyes. Really? I
thought that was the really obvious one.
It never occurred to me the first time I watched it, and this time I was watching it and I went, oh, that's a nice little, because it's not too in your face. It's kind of
yeah.
It doesn't really mean anything. It's just, whereas the madhouse is such a famous line, and it is just thrown in for kind of effect.
Yeah.
Whereas the good one, the one that comes later, works in such a great referencing the original, but also is a great moment because, so it's Felton's basically having a duel with Caesar. As Caesar's about to man his big escape with all the other apes, and Caesar grabs Felton, and Felton says, "Get your damn, your goddamn hands off me, you dirty ape," or whatever the line is. The exact line from the original film that Heston says. And the reason why it's such a perfect reference is because it's the first time he speaks in front of the apes. That's the big shocking moment where the apes all go, oh, "Man can speak," and here Felton says that line, and then for the first time in the movie, Caesar says no, and it's the first line.
The first time he speaks, it's perfect. You can't play that moment any better.
No, as a reference, and then the fact that the music all completely goes after it, it's just silence, and all the other apes, and the other guy who's got the gun is just watching in awe. It's just what the shit, what the shit just happened, and it's perfect because it flips the original movie, and it's perfect. I can't compliment it enough. I smiled so hard when this happened the first time. When I saw it for the first time.
It's rare that you see a reference and go, they played that into the plot. and did it, so well.
Yeah,
But,
seamless.
like, yeah, like you say, it's because it works on its own anyway, because it's it's a shocking moment. So you just say you hadn't seen the original and and somehow you didn't know that line, even though that would be weird. But you didn't get the context of it. It still works.
Yeah, it still plays completely fine.
Yeah. But then when you realize it's the complete reversal of what happened with that was his line first speaking and realization, and then it's the same here where it's the realization of that they can speak. It's just fantastic.
That's when he becomes. If I'm comparing it to a superhero movie, that's when he becomes a superhero.
Yeah.
Basically, that's the moment. That's the moment where Superman flies for the first time. Is when he says no.
It is. Yeah, that's not. He stands up and just does it.
Yeah, it is. And because like Felton is such a dick in this movie, he's such a villain. He treats the apes like shit. He mocks them. He shocks them. I didn't mean that for that to rhyme, but it did. It worked. Yeah. Let's move on. He's bringing girlfriends round and like tormenting them.
Yeah, are they really impressed by that?
I don't know.
Seems strange.
If she's shitty enough to date that shithead, then probably.
No, that's fair.
Yeah. Assholes attract assholes, I guess. So it's kind of my thing. So no, that line is great. Because this is the thing. One of my favorite moments of the movie actually is before the no line, when Caesar goes in. He snuck out, right? It's when he decides not to leave with Franco, because Franco kind of comes in. It's after his dad's died, because he's given him the new formula and it's not worked. It's killed him. He comes in with a bribe. Give me Caesar back, because Caesar, of course, stuck up for John Lithgow, which is a really, again, heartbreaking scene, because he's doing the right thing, and then the bite's too far, and it's like, oh shit, animal control's coming. There's nothing we can do about that now. And you feel bad for him. You feel like when he goes in the cage, it's like, no, this is a prison for him, because he's smart enough to want to do other things, to the point where he draws his window on the...
Yeah, just so it has some semblance of home.
Yeah. And he makes the choice, because he does the thing where he sort of asserts himself as the leader by letting the gorilla out, and the gorilla sort of backs him, and that's when the other one, who was kind of leader before, kind of submits and does the hand thing that shows that he's now in charge. He's the one given permission. But he sneaks out and he goes back home, and he creepily watches them sleep, because obviously at this point Franco and Caroline are a couple, but he steals the formula, the drug that made him the way he is, that made him smart. And he knows that moment where he stabs it and lets it all roll out in the cages, and theoretically making them all smart like him, because he's trying to like rally them, and then the orangutan's like, ape's dumb, because he can speak in sign language. That's worth mentioning. He can already do that.
Yeah. Is it before that the moment with the cookies?
Yeah, that's when he's first starting to sort of train them. Yeah,
I really like that he does manage to some degree, like, again, to go back to the superhero thing, he does kind of inspire them just through him being better.
Yeah. To an extent, but ultimately there's limits, because they are not intelligent enough to...
Right, but he gets here, it's like one each, we share sort of thing.
But one of my favourite moments, I think the no is obviously a standout, and then the action at the end's a big standout, but one of my favourite moments is after he does this and he lets all the gas canisters out, when he wakes up the next morning, or he's already up actually, right? And I love the look in his face as he's looking around, watching all the other apes wake up. And it's the look in all the apes on their face, because every single, this is how good the CG and the motion acting is every single one of them, as they're waking up, you see it in their face. It's like they've woken up for the first time.
It's like they realise that something's changed.
Yeah, you can see it in all of them, and there's this great close-up. So it's one of the famous shots they use in the trailer, actually, of Caesar just looking around with his eyes, like he's making sure his plans worked. It feels like it's building. It's actually a really well-paced film. I didn't realise when I went back to watch it this time how well structured it was.
It's really, well, we're on that in some space, it's shorter than I remembered. Because obviously, I think of a modern summer blockbuster, I think it's 2 hours at least. And I think even the original Apes was about 2 hours.
Yeah, that was
just
about 2
under.
hours.
But this is about an hour 40.
Hour 45, I think.
Hour 45, right. So it's like, it feels like brisk.
Yeah, it doesn't waste any time. It gets things to the point. Almost maybe a touch quickly at the start, actually, like, because he gives his dad, John Lithgow, the cure, and then he's cured, and then we have a 3-year time jump, and then we have another 5-year time jump after we go to the reserve, and he gets to climb the trees. And, I almost would have, I could have used them maybe a little bit more.
The 5-1 bothered me a little bit in terms of, so the 3-year one we get through dialogue, right? We're told, oh yeah, so at 1 year he was like this, and then at year 2 he was doing these things, and I like that because it was like, oh, it's chronicling time as like a the scientific diary like we were having anyway. The 5-year one, I think it's a fantastic sequence. Him running through the trees, swinging and climbing, and
and obviously, it's like the time's jumping as he goes up. So his clothes are changing, the weather's changing.
It's gorgeous,
and he's getting bigger, obviously, as well because he's getting older.
And then it comes up at the bottom saying 5 years later, and that felt really unnecessary to me. Like I was wondering, that he grew, and
I was wondering what your complaint was going to be because I really like that sequence.
I do as well.
It's just the text,
the text. I was like, it felt, after they'd handled it so well before, and it was handled so well visually in the sequence as it was, this felt like really clunky, and they were unsure of themselves. I don't know why it was needed.
Honestly, I'll be honest. I would guess that's a note from a producer. They said, I love it, but make it clear. Put in a caption.
Maybe.
I'd almost be willing to bet something on it.
I agree. That is the most likely.
Don't get me wrong. I don't think they meddle in the movie that much. I feel like we got a good movie. We got a vision. It feels like a vision, which is something that I didn't expect getting into it. I was expecting some heartless like Apes movie, just to use the name.
Yeah, just a bit of action.
But I feel that feels like something like a producer or the studio would lean in and go, like, just add in a caption there. We feel it's just not...
no, it's not a big deal. It just bothered me in the moment. I was just like, why is that necessary? Kind of feels like it was perfect as it was.
I love all the growing up stuff. I like when they're leaving the reserve and he looks over at the dog, and he has that little sort of moment where the dog's barking at him, and then he sort of drills back at him. But he refuses to go in the back like he always does, and he goes and sits in the seat like a person, and he asks if he's a pet because he doesn't like the idea that he's one of them.
I love that when he goes and sits in the back seat, and then Franco comes up to the window. It's kind of like he's a surly teenager.
Yeah.
It's so good.
No, it works really well. And I like that Franco does just immediately like take him and shows him the lab. Doesn't take him in, obviously, because he can't just walk in with an ape. Especially one that he snuck out. But he explains it. He explains, your mother was here and that's what happened to her and she died. And he's honest about it. Like he actually does try to be kind of a good... Even though he does some things, he jumps the gun a little bit, try to save his father and heal him. Which, by the way, to be fair, the drug did work for 8 years. It's worth mentioning it didn't start failing until 8 years, which is pretty good. It's better than any other Alzheimer's cure that the world's got going.
Yeah, and I think this part in particular where he tells him, it's kind of like any anything in when you get movies about adoption, like the idea that like the good parents that they're honest and they talk to the kid and go, look, this is the situation, and this is kind of what happens here.
Yeah, or even not adoption, even some... I mean, it is, but just another example would be like when a dad like has to explain that like why the mother's not really there, and it's this darker story compared to whatever the lie was up until that point, like or vice versa. Obviously, mum telling why the dad's not there, kind of thing. It has that kind of vibe to it, and I really appreciate that as well. I think everything feels relatable. But it's still, at the same time, it does have that kind of mistreated pet aspect to it, where you feel like they're... Like, you sympathise because you feel like all the humans are just immediately looking... I mean, the asshole neighbour. Like, there's this asshole who beats him. And you actually... Like, when Caesar jumps out and defends John Lithgow and, like, punches him or whatever and kicks him, you're actually kind of like, give him one. Like, do it.
Yeah, but then you are like... I think at first when he goes down for him and, like, just stops him because he's... Obviously, at this point, Lithgow he's regressed and he's confused with the cars. Yeah. And the neighbour has no sympathy.
No, he doesn't. He's pointing at him. That's why he comes down, because he's being aggressive. He sees that his grandfather...
He's just trying to defend his family.
Yeah.
When he goes too far, I think it's even before the bite. I think it's when the guy runs away and tries to go back into his house, but he comes round, he does that kick and sends him flying back over.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that is too far as well, but I think the bite is when it's like, no, he's a rabid animal now.
Yeah.
That's what it feels. It feels like he's a rabid dog who needs to be put down at that point. And you're like, oh god, he's crossed a clear line there.
Absolutely.
And your heart sinks. You're like, oh no, and that's obviously what makes him go to the sanctuary. But no, it's you know what? I can't wait for the comments now telling us what this place is called.
Yeah, it's. Do you know what I really like about it?
Hmm.
I love the small little Easter eggs, the actual big, the main room that they're all in.
Hmm.
The shape is like the cage that Heston's in
Ah,
the
yeah,
original.
yeah. The cage
The kind
outside.
of the
Yeah,
bell cage, yeah.
yeah, I can see it. So as much as I don't think it has as much to say as the original or even Dawn, I do think there is some stuff in here. I like that when the Caesar goes into this, the first time he's let into that main room of the sanctuary again, but with all the other apes, and it's like it's like playtime essentially,
Yeah.
exercise time, uh, and he tries to go up and shake the current leader's hand. I want to say his name is Rocket. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
And he goes to shake his hand, and it's mentioned in the dialogue before with Felton and that about the clothes, like how all the other apes might give him shit because he's wearing clothes because he's different, and then sure enough he like rips the top off and he mocks him and kind of bullies him essentially, and I like this. It's not a super deep message, but it is there the idea that, and I want to make this very clear as well to anyone who falls into this category. This is clearly saying that people who are stupid will mistreat anyone they see as different.
Yeah.
Now that's not to say that there's not such a thing as a smart racist, because there's conniving people who are more power hungry certainly and use things like that to their advantage. But I think there is a certain contingency of people who are racist or homophobic or anything like that, where it's just because they're different. Oh, I fear that. Oh, shunned.
Yeah, it's a lack of education.
Yeah. And I think it's telling that the smart ape, Caesar, of course doesn't think this way. For the most part, like he has a couple of slips with the dog and stuff where he reacts because he's being attacked back and he kind of retaliates. But all the other apes who are less intelligent, they're apes, react this way, and I think that's just a nice little bit of social commentary there.
Yeah, there's a few. Again, the original movie touched on it a little bit in the animal experimentation. Obviously, in that case, it was when they were experimenting on the humans, but here it's much more obvious, obviously, because they have them in the labs, and then you have the way Felton treats them all because he's a dick.
Yeah,
and it's very surface level and obvious, but it's still there quite heavily actually.
it's there, but I don't. As much as you're saying it's surface level, I don't think it doesn't feel shallow either. It feels like no, it feels. It
Yeah,
works.
I say surface level because
Yeah.
there's no reading into it as a message. It's just it presents it as animal cruelty, and you just see it as that. Is what I meant by surface level.
And I don't even necessarily think all of the experimentation feels that way. Like at the start, certainly, like the main sort of buddy who doesn't want to put down the
Kyle
apes.
Levine.
Aye, him. Yeah, I don't know his name.
Oh, no, that's his character's name.
Okay, sure. But he doesn't want to do it, and he's upset that he had to put them all down. He tried to talk his boss out of it, and ultimately he's like, "I'm not doing this to the newborn Caesar. Like, I'm not doing it." So you're sympathetic to him. You feel like Franco definitely treats them better.
Yeah, again, it's actually all the people in the lab, like those who seem to do well. It seems to be the executives.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an anti-business corporation message as well in there.
I also wonder if there's just a little bit of meta commentary about movie making going on here, where Franco's trying to create his drug that does all this, and he's getting a bit too far. And quite rightly, the executive say, "No, you're moving too fast. This happened. We can't let you do that." But then later on, when he comes back and says, "Oh, it also improves intelligence, and it does this and it does that," and then the executives just keep going ahead without him, and they're like, "No, you shut up."
Money, you say?
Yeah, money, and he just shuts them out, and they keep going anyway, and it it ends up causing the apocalypse, so basically.
Pretty much.
But yeah, so I don't know if that's intentional, but I kind of read that from it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Actually, I really like how they showed that Lithgow got better after he took the first cure. Because when Franco first comes home and you hear him just sort of banging away on the piano, and it's just kind of he's making a bit of a tune, but it's not quite there, and he's sort of fumbling. But then when Franco wakes up after he's given him the cure, you just hear this beautiful sonata just played to perfection.
And you know exactly what's happened.
Yeah,
you don't even need to see him and have the conversation to know it's worked.
Yeah, he's got everything back. It's so simple and effective, but you just immediately know it. But then you get when he's getting ill again because he's holding the fork upside down, and it's that really great thing. And again, it's kind of like a kid taking care of the parent, where Caesar steps in and fixes it for him. And it again, it's smart. It's kind of like the reference later on when he says no, it works in both directions, and it's like this really smart thing that says, okay, he's getting ill again, but Caesar's now this smart. He's this smart that he can fix that, and it's showing you both sides at the same time. It's really
Do you
good.
know what I really like about when he is ill? The whole time, he always remembers Caesar. Like, because obviously they remember family members, but even his son, he thinks he's much younger because he's like, "Oh, you had a test today, chemistry was it? Something like." He thinks he's in school.
I don't know if I read that as he thinks he's in school, or at least maybe he does, but I think he's sort of mixing up with, because he did have the thing where he was showing his thing, he was showing the cure to people. I think he was sort of like taking that and then putting it into that context kind of thing.
Yeah, could be.
Because when he said that, I immediately thought, oh yeah, he thinks he's still in high school or whatever, and then I went, oh no, but he did have that kind of test today. So
he did have a test, which is why I think he's remembered. Oh, he had a test, but then he's got confused then and gone, oh, school.
But I think he did remember he had this thing today. He knew something was happening today, and he was right about it. He just he's mangling it to other things.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works.
But no, so great stuff. So Caesar, once he gets all the apes out and they're all smart and they've stormed out of the place, they go to the zoo and break more apes out. They go to of course the lab and get more. Presumably more of they break out the apes that are there. They want to rescue them. Presumably they probably get more of the gas as well to get all the apes.
Yeah,
in the zoo.
I think that's the assumption.
Yeah. So they've got all these extra apes from the zoo. Then they even steal one ape that's in animal control. It's just in the van, and they pull him out. Yeah. And there's some great shots and all this stuff. It's when they're obviously when they're all swinging in the trees is really good. When they go on the tram. The San Francisco tram, and it's like our four main characters, because we basically have the Rocket, who's the former leader of the sanctuary. You have Caesar, of course. You have the gorilla, and you have the orangutan. It's like our four main apes. It's actually really impressive that for a bunch of characters who can't speak, I clearly have distinct four characters in my head that they developed over the course of the movie.
Yeah, it is really impressive that you go, and it's not just that they look different, like, because they're different species. It's no, they are different individuals. You can tell, like, because even Rocket and Caesar are the same. They're both chimps.
Yeah, but
they're very different. And obviously, Maurice has his whole personality. It's completely different.
Yeah, he's got sign language, whereas the gorilla's obviously the big muscle who.
Yeah.
Like. So they all have their distinct thing, and it's just the epic shot as they're coming up. And then there's more of that, of course, with them all climbing the San Francisco Bridge. They're trying to get to the reserve. That's where home's going to be. By this point, the police are involved. Everyone's involved. They've cordoned off the bridge. Franco's trying to get to him. The whole thing's going down, and the fog comes in.
Oh yeah.
Nice and conveniently. But all the shots of them climbing the bridge look great. And then the police are all waiting at the other end, and there's that great thing where, again, they're using tactics, and they flip a bus, or I guess it's like a school bus.
Yeah, it is a school bus, yeah.
And the gorilla and a bunch of the apes are all pushing it together as a shield, because they're this smart. And you're like, oh man, this is really smart. And this is something I love about this movie, and again about Dawn, is that I feel like they're gradually getting to the point where, we'll be at the point from the original movie to an extent where they can all speak and stuff, but they're not rushing it. Like, Caesar said no, he says another line at the end, obviously, but otherwise he doesn't speak at all. The other apes do not speak.
Yeah, and even only Maurice has sign language.
Yeah. Which I'm guessing that's a thing they can do already, since he could do that in the movie.
Well, I mean, I know you can teach certain apes sign language anyway, because that's a thing that you can do.
Yeah, and he said he was in the circus, so it makes sense that they taught him some tricks.
Yeah, it was an act.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And also I like that this is after they all wake up and you just see they've all got the green eyes, like the bright green eyes as they're coming out. Yeah. And he knows that he's succeeded, kind of thing. But no, the whole thing is great. And then obviously the evil businessman's in the chopper, and the gorilla jumps into the chopper and takes it down, but the gorilla gets shot and dies in the process. And there's that great moment where, again, because he's a character, because he's a fully fleshed out character that we care about, and Caesar like holds him as he's dying. It's like a proper emotional death scene. And Caesar goes over to the chopper, and the evil businessman's like sort of dangling off the bridge, and he's like, "Oh, give me your hand, help, please!" And he just he puts his hand out a bit, and then he pulls it back in, and he just walks away. And then it's Toba, who's Koba, sorry, yeah. You know, I did that when Don came out. I kept accidentally calling him Toba. It's one of these things that's just stuck in my head since then. So I apologise, but I'm probably going to say Toba instead of Koba every so often. But Koba just comes over, who's the new Ape, they started experimenting in the lab. He was treated not very well. He's got a big scar on his face, so he looks more villainous. And more than that in the next movie. But he kills him. He pushes the chopper over the edge, and evil businessman dies. And you're kind of on his side.
I think that was one of the few moments where I was not sold on the CG. It was, his foot where he wraps it, where he pushes the chopper down. I thought the foot looked a bit funny. I think it's notable that they actually stay away from the feet most of the movie. Like I don't think they were confident in showing them.
Well, that's fine. I mean, they have
Like, they knew the limitations. Yeah. But I think obviously they had to show it for that moment. But I think it stood out to me as one of the weaker bits.
I mean, to be fair, I think a lot of when Caesar's running around the house and he's grabbing onto things with his feet, that mostly looks quite good. So obviously it's mixed and matching, but I think the good thing about feet is even actors don't have to show their feet a lot. There's one of the funny things about filmmaking that you might not realise is that typically in a movie, especially when they're on a set, I know to bring up the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because I've not done it this episode yet, I know for a fact it was in one of the extras, there was footage of this. Whenever they're not shooting a wide shot, and it's just a medium shot where you're just seeing down to either their chest or their stomach, it's just that part of their body, they're walking around in the slippers.
Oh yeah, my favourite story is Peter Cushing when he was on Star Wars. He hated the boots. They found them really uncomfortable, so he just wore slippers for the entirety of his shot.
Because if you can't see them, it doesn't matter, because they're going to put the sound effect in of the boots walking later.
Yeah, just who cares?
So and then I've heard stories of actors not even wearing pants when they're in certain scenes because it's hot or something. So no.
Why not?
Actually, I saw it was an LA newsman who didn't wear pants because obviously quite hot in LA.
Oh yeah, I saw this. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got a suit on, a shirt and tie for above desk, but if you look under the desk, he's wearing just Hawaiian shorts. It's pretty funny. But again, you don't see it, doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So the point I'm making is that you don't actually have to see feet that often, so it kind of works that you don't see it.
You don't think about that you're not seeing them because, like you say, it's not something that you typically see very much.
Whereas if you watch the movie where they hid the face most of the movie, you would notice it, and that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was a really good Tales from the Crypt, Twilight Zone episode where they hide the faces all episode, but it built mystery. Why are they hiding the faces? What do they look like?
You can use it.
There's a purpose for it, but you would notice it and go, they're hiding the faces. There must be something going on.
Yeah.
And you would question it, whereas you don't question that seeing the feet. So it just makes sense that they're off frame most of the time.
Exactly.
Unless you've got a foot fetish. Some directors do. Some directors love the feet shot.
Do any directors spring to mind?
I
can't say I've ever noticed any film that particularly focuses on
I'm not just saying this, but Whedon actually, particularly with Serenity, has a bit of a river foot fetish. He keeps showing her walking about on her bare feet. There's always these close-ups of her feet.
Next time I watch that movie, I'm going to see this now. Because I never noticed before, but now I'm going to.
Early on, and then later on, there's a lot of... I think it's in the commentary track. There's a shot when they get to Miranda. I won't spoil anything, obviously, but there's a shot when they get to the planet Miranda. And he was explaining that there's a high-up shot looking down at river as she's walking. And the reason why it's high up like that is because they had to do a reshoot. And they couldn't go back to the place they shot everything else. It was gone. They'd been there and came back. So they shot it in the parking lot of the studio. And so that's why it's a high shot looking down, because they could only see the ground.
Yeah.
And they could just colour time it. But when he was saying that in the commentary, he added on, but it was another opportunity to see her feet. So I was all about it. I think that's pretty funny. So
yeah, fair enough.
To be fair, whenever I've directed something, I've usually put in some feet shot. I think when you're doing suspense and you see the steps,
I think it's something that you get every so often, and it can work. It's just like you say, it's when you because obviously typically most of your movie you're framing around heads and bodies, so you're not looking at the feet very much. They're just not in frame by its nature.
It's also a technique to avoid showing a violent moment. If you cut to the feet, because if the feet look suddenly stop, you can tell the person's been stabbed or something. You can see they've died.
Yeah. It's when they're being strangled.
Yeah, it's an artsy way of showing that without. Yeah. If you don't want to make it feel grotesque. But that was a weird tangent about feet in film.
Yeah. We were talking about Cobra pushing the dick off.
Pushing the dickhead off, and it's a great moment. And but so they get to the reserve, and Franco runs in, and this is the emotional kind of final moment where he comes in, and Koba's actually about to kill him. He's ready to kill any human he sees, and Caesar comes out and says no, because that's actually one of the things about Caesar that I really like is when they're breaking out of the sanctuary, And they do end up killing Felton, but it's kind of his own fault because he turns on the shocker. Yeah.
And I wonder how much Caesar actually knew that was going to kill. I know he's smart, but
yeah, but does he know that electricity plus water equals death?
Right, exactly. Because to him, the hose is something that has just been used against them as a punishment. In his mind, it's right. I'm going to use this as a punishment back.
Now that you mentioned that, I would be curious to go back and look at that scene and look at his reaction after the.
Yeah, see if he was shocked.
Yeah, no pun intended.
Yeah, that was. I realised as soon as I said that.
But no, what I really like is all the other apes start beating up the other guy, who's been more friendly and kind of timid and not wanting to hurt them.
He's not done anything actively wrong.
So,
he hasn't necessarily treated them particularly well, but he's never been a complete dick.
And Caesar kind of steps in and goes, no, get away from him, and without saying anything, obviously. And he puts him in the cage softly and just sort of pats him on the shoulder and says, "Just go with it. You'll be fine."
Yeah. He locks the cage door, but it's almost like a protective measure for him. It's like, look, you're safer in here.
It's almost like in time he expects to teach the other apes from right from wrong, and we shouldn't just hurt them unwillingly.
But you got to get built to that. Let's start basics.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of that gets brought up in Dawn, and that's a big theme in that movie. But,
I mean, that's it, isn't it? You don't teach a baby morality.
Yeah, you need to wait until they've... Because that's actually one of the things I like, because obviously he loses his temper with, the neighbour poking Lithgow, and he loses his temper at the dog a little bit. And what I like is that he is really smart, and because he's 8 years old, because he skips, because we have the two time jumps, and he's 8 years old, and he's probably actually much smarter than an 8-year-old human is. But
definitely.
But at the same time, as much as he is, say, smarter than that, there's certain things that don't come with intelligence. It just comes with growing up and having the experience. And I think controlling your temper is one of those things. I don't think it doesn't matter how smart an 8-year-old is. Kids have temper tantrums, and that's kind of what some of this is.
Absolutely.
And it's this kind of thing you can't teach not to have a temper tantrum. It's just as you grow older, you have more experience, you become more in control of your emotions, and you learn how to sort of level them out.
Right, and that's it. And I think he knows, to all these other apes, this is new. They don't know what they're doing yet. I need to teach them.
Yeah.
And until I do, this is just their reaction. So I just have to go, right, look, just protect this guy, get him in there, and I'll worry about teaching them later. Absolutely.
And so Franco gets to him in the woods, and he's like, "Come home, I'll protect you." And he's being serious. And one of the things a little bit Lithgow as well is he misses Caesar. Like, he's upset that Caesar's gone after he's left. It's like, you really get the feeling that these 8 years they've bonded as a family unit. Has been a real thing.
That's what I was getting at earlier. Like, even when he at the start, when he has the Alzheimer's still, he remembers Caesar. Like, when he's introduced to him, like, we see how he's kind of scrambled and all over the place, but he still remembers him. And then at the end, when it comes back and he's much, much worse, he still remembers Caesar, because Caesar comes out and protects him. He's like, "Caesar, no, like, stop." He still remembers him. It's like he's grounded him, and then he kind of spirals without him.
I also kind of like the idea that there's a subtle little thing like is that obviously there's a drug that actually does work because it makes them like super smart, but I like the idea that it's really the companionship that helped him, because he gets worse again after Caesar leaves. That's when he ultimately gets really bad and then dies.
Yeah, he spirals without the family member, basically.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. That whole idea of like, someone's lonely, someone needs help, you get them a companion of something. Usually it's a cat or a dog, but maybe a fish. But fish is a shit pet.
Yeah, at least get him like a hamster or something.
You want even a hamster. I feel like if the animal can't sit with you on the couch, what's the point?
Well, yeah. If you can't hold it in your hand.
Yeah.
Like on your lap, or
on your lap.
You can't physically touch it.
If the animal cannot sit and watch the movie with me, which, by the way, a cat sat and watched the movie with me when I watched it earlier, so,
So it says something where, like, by the rules we're applying here, fish, no good. Snake, yeah, totally fine.
Well, that can sit in your lap. I wouldn't want it to, though.
Oh, I like snakes.
I'm not particularly fond of snakes, I have to admit.
I like snakes.
Especially multiple snakes. There's something about a pit of snakes that really creeps me out.
Well, I mean, a pit of aggressive snakes, sure, that'd creep me out, because that's supposed to be...
Well, that's what I usually think of, though, when I think of snakes. One snake, it's not that bad, but, like, I still wouldn't want to really, socialise with it.
I like snakes.
Yeah, I'm
I'd
not
rather have a
that guy.
snake than a cat.
Oh no. You can't
Yeah.
pet a snake.
Of course you can. You put it over your neck and you sit down and you
I'm
relax.
not putting a snake over my neck. Like,
That's normal. You hang it around your neck. That's kind of normal.
yeah. So was burning women at the stake for witchcraft for centuries. That doesn't make it right.
Touche.
Ah,
I think
exactly. Shut up.
see this is a flawed argument because you can't argue that because you're right. That,
Exactly. So shut
that
up. I
that
win.
that no. But your point was correct, but the context you're using it in does not make that correct. One does not equal the other.
But we've just not proved that it's wrong yet. That's all. We're just waiting on that.
Well, I haven't proved that cats are all completely evil yet, but I know that.
Cats aren't evil. You're evil. Cats not so much. You have to earn a cat's respect, but once you do, they are loyal creatures. Anyway, I was going to. I've been trying to talk about this final scene in the woods for like the last 10 minutes.
We will be getting there.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of it was valid tangents into other parts of the film, but that was
A bit about the snake might not have been.
not so much. But yeah, so he finds him and he's like, trying to convince him, come home, I'll protect you, and it feels genuine. It feels like he really wants his family member back. He's trying to get his son back, essentially. And Caroline helps, which the way she can. She distracts the cop so he can do it. She's on board with this because she sees him maybe as part of the family as well.
Oh, absolutely.
And he leans in for like a sort of hug. And this is actually something that I don't know if I didn't notice it the last time I watched it, or if I just forgot that it was a whisper. And like he's not wanting the other apes to hear him. He just whispers into his ear. He sort of speaks. Well, maybe not quite a whisper, but softly. He doesn't shout it. He doesn't say it sort of.
He kind of speaks at a normal level.
Yeah, just sort of
Different.
quietly into his ear. Caesar is home. And I love the expression in Franco's face as he pulls his... Because this is the first time he's heard it. Because he heard the other guy say, oh, he spoke. But he's not heard it. And it's this kind of amazing thing where, like a good father figure should realise, he's right. He's found his home. He's left his nest, and this is him in the real world. This is his world now. And he accepts it. And that's kind of, we have that final great shot of them climbing the trees, and then he's looking over at San Francisco. Obviously, there's one little extra scene and subplot that leads to it that we need to talk about, but that's the big climactic ending. It's beautiful. It's great imagery. It's a great movie. I really like it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's held up. It's held up these 6 years later, which I'm really happy to say.
Yeah, it's really hard to complain about most of it. It's really solid, and like I say, it's all about these characters and their relationships and their journeys.
That's it. That is every single vapid blockbuster that doesn't work. That's what they forget. They forget that the characters at the core of it are what the movie's really about, and they have to have something that. And I feel like Franco's arc is he has to learn to let go, which he doesn't with his father, and it eats him alive that he doesn't. And he makes the right choice with Caesar. And admittedly, it's easier to let someone go when they're off to be a better, their own person, as opposed to like letting someone die. But that's ultimately his thing: is he has to learn that he can't control everything. And that's a very good arc. Caesar, of course, has this coming of age arc where he learns to be a leader and learns to be all these things. So no, it's great stuff. So obviously the last little scene we get, which is kind of it's mid credits. We get a little mid credit scene. The asshole neighbor, who we learned earlier on. I don't think he actually said he was a pilot per se, but he says he goes to the airport. He says that as if it's where he usually goes. So he at least works at the airport if he's not something else. And then we see him at the end. He's got his pilot hat on. He's gone off to the airport, and he's sick because what was the guy's name? The buddy at the...
Tyler Labine.
There you go, Tyler Labine. We see him get sick because he breathed in some of the new one, because the one they've been using is the 12. This is the 13 that they'll be the new one.
Yeah, and for some reason they made it airborne. What stupid idea was that?
I know. So maybe that's an argument you can make. Is maybe some of the scientific decisions that
before it's this, it's fluid injection.
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense. This is what you do. And then they went, nah, let's make it airborne.
I wonder if that was... I mean, they never explained this, but obviously you had to make it stronger. I wonder if that was part of the decision, like, airborne. Because he says, I have to make it more aggressive because eventually the body will fight back and it won't work.
That's fair.
So
I don't know enough to dispute that.
Yeah. But he gets sneezed on by him, and because he's a pilot, he goes to the airport. We can see that he's clearly also sick. And then we get that, obviously, over the rest of the credits, we get the red lines going over the map to show how it's spreading. So he goes to Germany, and then it spreads from Germany to like 10 different locations, and then it keeps multiplying.
And I think that's the moment where it's clear this is a separate continuity to the original movie.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Because I think that's the thing is the original movie's so steeped in Cold War. That's why things go this way. Whereas with this, it's still our fault. It's still, it's still a human being. It's not human being as a society, admittedly. It's more of a specific group. But it's like our own hubris, our own sort of disregard for what we shouldn't be tampering with.
Yeah.
That leads to our demise.
And obviously it's spreading as an infection epidemic is very relevant to a lot of the fears of today. I mean, how many outbreaks have we had since then? I mean, obviously Ebola springs to mind.
Yeah, SARS.
We've had a few. I mean, I'm trying to think. Obviously, what was before this, what was after, but there's been a few either side that are big major ones.
I think early in my life, I vaguely remember something called mad cow disease.
I
couldn't specifically tell you what it was doing. I just remember being told not to maybe eat as much meat for a while, just in case.
Yeah, that was a pretty rough one, actually.
I was really young when that happened, so I had vague memories.
Same.
But no, yeah. So it's a thing. Really, really good movie. Like, it's really solid. Like, honestly, like, if anything, I think of it higher now than I did when I first seen it. Like, remembering why it was so good and seeing the character arcs and analysing it a bit with you afterwards, I feel like it holds up really well.
Yeah, no, I agree. So also, small Easter egg I really like, because there's a few, obviously, like he's holding the Statue of Liberty little model.
Oh yeah, there's that. We see the mission to Mars, and then there was another thing about the lost in space.
That interests me, the mission to Mars thing. It's like, okay, so if they wanted to, after this trilogy, they could jump ahead and do their own actual version of the original.
Of this mission to Mars coming back, or
I
see what you mean. I could see that. Obviously, they couldn't treat it like a twist like the original did. They'd have to go
which would actually be. You know what, like you say, when you first went to see this one, it's like, right, who wants this? And part of me goes, right, do I really want to see a more direct remake of that? But I think them being forced to not treat it as a twist and being forced to set it along that lines would actually make it interesting, because they'd be forced to do something different with it.
Yeah, I also think part of it would be, like, maybe it wouldn't be as far ahead, so we could still have Caesar rather than different apes. Maybe they would want to do that.
Obviously, we see society crumbles pretty quick.
Yeah, so I'd be interested to see an older Caesar and like how does he react to, like, maybe once like people are finally just gone completely. I mean, I said that we don't know how war's going to end. Maybe there'll be some kind of be a happier ending where some people do get to coexist with humans, but with the apes rather. But I'd be really interested in that myself and see. And part of me wants there to be no more after the next one. I feel like if this is a great trilogy, and as a trilogy, it is the best part of the franchise. I mean, assuming War doesn't completely shit the bed, but it's the same director's done, so I'm feeling
and no reason to be worried yet.
Yeah, and the trailers look good, so Woody Harrelson's in it, which is always a nice sign. But
it is. No, I have to agree with you. Like I say, I don't necessarily want more, but I think it was interesting. They said, like, maybe it would be interesting if they did decide to try that.
At least if they do more, I like that idea, is keeping it somewhat separate. Like, this is a contained trilogy where if everything after it's shit, you can ignore it. This is the trilogy you want to experience. This is the one you can watch.
Yeah.
And obviously the original film still works really well, so it's a great sort of companion where it's like original movie, and then new one, and obviously, like, yeah, going back and watching the original and the Apes It versus the current CG is like night and day. But obviously we complimented the original suits and how they at least let the actors be expressive. There was like compliments to give. It was the best they could do at the time.
Yeah, exactly. So. And I mean, like we say, we find it hard to imagine that anyone will look back at this in 50 years and go, "Oh, it was the best they could do at the time."
And it was the best they could do at the time.
It was, yeah, obviously it was. But we find it hard to imagine it being that much better at all. But you just never know. In
10 years' time, we'll look back and say, you know what, we've actually advanced a bit again since then.
Yeah, maybe. Exactly. You just don't know, do you?
So, a two-dimensional man cannot comprehend the third dimension.
Exactly.
Just like we can't comprehend the fourth dimension. Unless you argue that it's time. which is up for debate.
But even that we can only comprehend in like
a linear fashion.
Yeah, linear fashion. We can only comprehend it straight through. So even then,
yeah. But no, great stuff. It's a fantastic film. So I guess that leaves us to rate Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah. I'm gonna start. Like, last time I saw it, I think I gave it an 8.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm gonna go up to an 8.5 this time.
I think I did the same, and I think I'm going to do the same. I think 8.5. I mean, 8.5. Yeah, 8 point. I think it's so close to earning that 9. It is. Really is. I think Tom Felton, not just his accent, but I think he is like maybe a bit cartoony in how villainous he is.
Yeah, you don't really know what. You don't never get a sense of why he's like that.
He's just a dick for the sake of being a dick.
Yeah, he's just. I don't get it.
Yeah. And as much as I read into some of the evil executive stuff at the lab, it is maybe the most undercooked element of the movie in terms of it's just there to serve the plot that's happening rather than really being its own thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And partly it's just because I can compare it to the next one, which is even better. So, but 8.5, I think that's fair. It really holds up. If you haven't checked out Rise and Dawn, I would really recommend doing so, and then going to see War when it comes out if you like the first two. So that is Rise of the Apes. Remember that throughout the month of June on Patreon, if you're a patron at the $5 tier or above, you can vote on the bonus episode for July. The 4 options are all from Christopher Nolan because he's got a film coming out in July, Dunkirk, and we want to sort of celebrate that by doing one of his other movies around the same time. So the options are of course Memento, Following, The Prestige, and Insomnia. So if you're on Patreon or you're thinking about going to Patreon and supporting the channel over there at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV to put my plug voice on, you can go and do that up until the last day of the month that votes up. But otherwise, of course, if you want to support the channel, you can do it by liking, subscribing, all that kind of stuff. Comment in the section below. Let us know what you think of the movie. But that is us. So thank you once again. We'll be back very soon with Dawn. Won't be the next episode, but it'll be soon because we've got 2 episodes a week for the next few weeks. So
I think it'll be in like 2 weeks.
I think it's 2 weeks sounds right. Which will be nicely just a week or 2 before War comes out. So yeah, do all that. Look forward to that. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Keep watching movies. We'll see you next time.